Good afternoon to everyone present here. I'm going to talk about how green buildings can be used as agents of sustainable change in especially in urban landscapes and to help combat global warming, right? So today we see an increasing movement of people from rural to urban landscapes in search of better opportunities, be it economic, educational, or others. And people generally move from rural areas to urban areas because of the perceived rural urban wage difference as proposed by Harris Todaro. So witnessing a massive increase in industrialization, urbanization, and population growth, cities are becoming increasingly congested and consequently exploiting more and more natural resources and causing destruction of natural habitat to try and meet its ever increasing demands. So in turn, the environment also provided by cities has been poor in terms of air quality, decent standard of living, etc. Thus, it is of crucial importance today that we design better urban planning systems for development while simultaneously encouraging the coexistence of nature, especially in this era where the average global temperatures are rising at an alarming rate due to the impending climate crisis. Now, a crucial sector that takes up a lot of our energy needs today and contributes to accelerate global warming is buildings. So what I'm going to say is basically the ways in which buildings can allow more environmental friendly methods right from its construction to a resident's comfort. So one of the basic things considered necessary for survival is obviously shelter. And this is found in the form of houses, bungalows, apartments, or whatever forms of human dwellings there are. We spend a lot of our time indoors and do a lot of our activities indoors. And this has become more relevant in today's world due to the global coronavirus pandemic. Uh, Construction is a major economic activity, but it is also one with major environmental impacts. Clearing up of forests, agricultural lands, barren lands to enable construction of buildings, and mining of raw materials like metals, rocks, and sands. Transportation of these raw materials to plants where they can be processed into construction materials like cement, glass bars, etc. Is just the beginning of the process. And these procedures are energy dependent and energy intensive. This energy required to carry out all these processes is called embodied energy, which accounts for around 10% of all the energy used in an industrialized nation. So we also further use energy, obviously living inside buildings to, let's say, uh, for our fans or to switch on the lights or to use our Wi-Fi connection or in the increasing, when we are witnessing the increase of global average temperatures, we also want more indoor comfort. So we switch on the AC or we store food in the refrigerator so that they don't get spoiled, right? So all these energy uses are called the operational energy, which accounts for about 40 to 50% of the average energy use in an industrialized nation. Now, a lot of the times we also just leave the fans and lights on. We're careless about where we're using this energy. We don't check whether the switches are on or off. And this wastes a lot of energy. Surprisingly, 5 to 10% of the 40 to 50% is just wasted. So that means 1/5 of the energy is just wasted. One more aspect that causes environmental degradation due to buildings is that we still use non-renewable energy sources to meet most of our energy needs, right? And these non-renewable energy sources, after combustion, lead to the release of harmful toxins like carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxides, nitrogen oxides into the air, right? And some pollutants like carbon dioxide and methane cause the greenhouse effect, which is basically the trapping of energy within the atmosphere and is the primary reason for global warming. Now, global warming obviously results in the rise of temperature around the planet, the rise of sea levels, and melting of glaciers. As was mentioned in a previous presentation, this is an alarming thing because the rise of sea levels means a lot of insecurities for a lot of people. The increase in the average global temperature also leads us to use even more energy, as I said, for cooling the temperatures inside the house. And we also spend a lot less time outdoors because we think it's too hot outdoors. So we don't go outside and we spend most of our time indoors. And on the inside too, buildings need to provide us good air quality, suitable temperatures, good living conditions. But unfortunately, this is not the case. They're designed and constructed in ways which create poor environment quality indoors, including the trapping of harmful chemicals and biological contaminants like pesticides, suspended particulates, gases, air fresheners, bacteria, viruses. And this is especially important, again, due to the global coronavirus pandemic, because I'm sure a lot of you have heard news which says that air conditioners are capable of trapping the virus. So all this creates unfit and unhealthy environment for us indoors as well. And in cities, especially due to the rise of slums in cities, this is even more harmful to those people who dwell in the slums, right? But in general, the effects that this construction can have on the human health is very severe. It can lead to a syndrome called the sick building syndrome, which has side effects like dry eyes, asthma, dry cough, dry skin, inability to concentrate, fatigue, headache, nausea, allergies, and many more things. But in a construction perspective, buildings are also one of the contributors towards global warming due to the input materials required to construct buildings. Let me give you an example here. Titanium, right? Titanium is a reflective metal. The walkie-talkie tower in London has a concave glazed facade that concentrates and reflects solar radiation, which causes visual discomfort to pedestrians and has also damaged cars parked in its vicinity. So how can we employ better strategies to ensure sustainable architecture? There are two kinds of systems that we use to use energy indoors: active systems and passive systems. Active systems generally refer to use of technology to generate comfort, like use of fans or ACs or lights. And passive systems uses natural sources like wind and all of that. So employing more passive systems can obviously benefit the environment, but also benefit the user. But how can we do this? Let me give you an example. Let's take a cold country. In a cold country, it would make more sense to orient the building's main facade and its windows towards the sun. That is, south in our hemisphere and north in the southern hemisphere. So where solar energy is abundant, solar radiation can actually meet almost all of the building's needs. And in a hotter country like India, cool breeze is vital for achieving thermal comfort. So ventilation is required, and thus the windows should be facing the direction of the night breeze. And to enhance this, we should ideally have cross ventilation, that is having windows facing both the windward and the leeward side, so it can allow movement of air. There's another concept that has come up, and that is called the green roofs and green facades. And I'm pretty sure you've seen like these vertical gardens on the outside of buildings and like plants on the roofs. So this has increasingly come up because it's looked at as a means of controlling the exposure of the building to sustain ambient conditions. For example, using plants as an outer layer over the building's envelope lowers the radiation impact on the building. And this is due to very simple scientific processes like photosynthesis. Plants absorb sun's radiation for photosynthesis. So that's why it also creates an insulating layer. Green roofs and green terraces also have an added benefit, and that is they create landscaped, open, and nature-friendly spaces for the coexistence of people and nature in a city, which is very hard to find, especially in a city. So you can see that these processes that I've just mentioned are very simple, just orienting the window towards where the wind comes from, or in a cold country towards the sun, right? But you have to be very practical in the application of these methods, because it's important that you take in the climate of your country. I mean, yeah, of your country, for example. So you ensure that in a cold country, you are making the most of the heat that is provided to you, and in a hotter country, you're making the most of the wind that comes. So you also want to ensure that you have windows that are operable, so you can open it and close it as you wish. And also you need storage spaces for solar radiation to be stored so that you can use it during other times of the day when the sun's energy may not be so abundant or may not be so viable to use, right? Uh, Also, when you're choosing plants for these vertical gardens, or let's say green roofs, you have to be careful to ensure that the plants do not take too much of water or any such thing, that they have to be very nature friendly, very eco friendly to that landscape. They have to be endemic plant species, because because when you use them, they generally just grow without a lot of fuss, right? Because we're not looking for plants that take a lot of water. That is not, that will not help in our motive to be more sustainable. So a cost benefit analysis of such situations, of the ones that I have just mentioned, is important, of course. But the thing that we're trying to meet when we talk about global sustainable architecture is the environmental costs of buildings should be low. These designs should promote conservation of energy, water, and other environmental resources, thus minimizing the impact of the building on the environment, right from the raw materials process to its demolition, let's say. There are some building standards and assessment tools that I'll be giving as examples that allow proper assessment of buildings and their performances. These aim to promote better and healthier indoor environments that provide thermal, visual, acoustic, and psychological comfort, high indoor air quality, and environmental quality as well. Leadership in the energy and environmental design, USA. Building Research Establishment Environmental Assessment Method, UK. Comprehensive Assessment System for Built Environment Efficiency, Japan, are some such examples of the assessment tools that exist across the globe, which emphasize different aspects from a long list of choices that a designer has to decide the components and the operations that will go into designing this building and make it a sustainable one, to ensure a sustainable building and help prevent the rise of average global temperatures. And this is especially important in today's world. And I would like to conclude with this. It's especially important in today's world because cities are increasingly coming under the heat for being very destructive, for being environmentally unfriendly. And these are options that urban planning systems can look forward to ensure that cities can also be sustainably built and create safe environments and good environments for the people inhabiting the city, while also ensuring that we do not cause destruction of our environment. Thank you.